Well, you got your first encounter, and do these come mostly in dreams, or do these come mostly in waking hours, and you start writing it down?
Yeah, like for me, Steve, I mean, when the Lord comes and He'll wake me often, and His presence just comes into the room, and I'll just posture myself in prayer, and sometimes I'll put on some music and just do a bit of soaking, just in His presence. And so this was, from a few days ago. This was October 20th, and so as I was, just, I guess I'll say, assuming the position,
Yeah.
and it's not that you go in, like for myself, it's just to be with Him.
Yeah.
You don't come with it's like putting the sail up, waiting for the wind to blow. And anyway, this morning He took me in, and He spoke to me first off, and He said, the resolution to defend, protect, and rebuild a nation standing to protect the children, family, and faith has been imparted unto Donald John Trump.
Yes.
In ways that cannot be denied. And so He spoke this to me, and I was taken actually then into the Spirit, and for me, it's like, I'm there. It's like I'm in the room, and here I am, and there I see President Trump. He was alone.
Can I ask you real quick? Were you actually transported to a place where he was? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So Steve, I'm taken actually into a room, watching him,
Okay.
and to me it was like the night before. A big announcement, the night before, where you're kind of preparing and posturing.
Yeah.
And so he was there, and very sober. It was in the early hours, of the morning, in the night watch. And, he was somber, and, he was reflecting at the information that he had and the intel that was at hand. But above that, he was in a posture of prayer, knowing what was coming, and knowing what was going to have happen in a way, and along the way, and in order to defend and protect the nation from the enemy within and from the enemy from the outside. And so, he was evaluating that. He was carrying the weight of that in a place of somber kind of intercession. And the call was clear. And it was this, and it was to bring freedom to the nation and to the nations. And so once again, one people, one blood, we the people, by the people, for the people, one nation under God.
Yes, Lord.
And this was what all of the things collapsing, all the things going on, this was actually what he was standing up. And so I saw this mantle upon the president, and I mean, it was so clear that it was to bring justice and freedom to many nations.
Yes, Lord.
And he had a humility, like he didn't carry it lightly, but he had a humility and a strength and a resolve, like no other. And he was sober as he reflected on the next steps, and I knew that he was having to make some hard decisions. But he understood the call of the Lord on him, and I could see that he was not going to make a move, not one, unless the Lord's timing was perfect, and it was led by him. And so I was taken out of there, and I'm taken into another room, and now I'm kind of behind behind a curtain, behind a stage, where I saw President Trump preparing to address the nations and the nation, and basically it felt like a big press conference. There was like the world press was there, and in the midst of that, he was also preparing to meet and deal with world leaders with an authority that was upon him that only comes from God. And honestly, Steve, it was like a moment of biblical proportions, and the event that had just taken place had left a wake around the world that had been a long time coming. And so with that, I'll say that there had been an event that internationally had shaken the world.
Oh, wow.
And had left, a wake, a void. And so this was the very moment at hand to bring the truth, the justice, and the righteousness forth for all to see in the aftermath of what had just happened. And the uncertainty, with the people, of the fallout and all that would be involved. And so as the Lord put President Trump in position for broadcast and to broadcast, he was surrounded by dozens of generals.
Wow.
That came in and stood at his side. This was like a briefing like we'd never seen before.
Wow.
And they were shoulder to shoulder. And I mean, the couple of dozen that I saw, they were a representation. I knew there was many more generals behind the scenes that were involved, but these were kind of the ones on the forefront. And so they had been able to take down and take out the cabal, the deep state, and the Illuminati foundations that controlled things for far too long. And I saw the Lord himself, the Lord of hosts, led them step by step, inch by inch, to eradicate these evil and demonic regimes once and for all.
Wow.
So Steve, as I see this and I see the dust settling, on the nations, there began a reestablishment of kingdom governance that the manifest sons and daughters had been created for. And I saw like the Lord himself, he was reestablishing the seven mountains for his purposes. So we have great days ahead.
And when you have an encounter like that, this was on the 20th, so this was like 4 days ago when you had this, you were transported. I know prophets and prophetic people, if there's one thing they rarely know or grasp is the exact time. But do you have a sense of the closeness of this hour that where you just experienced that? I mean, what would you say?
I'm going to say this. I wasn't given the date. I wasn't given, a calendar,
Right.
this is when it's going to happen. But in my spirit, it felt like it was almost going to be like the next day. Like we were so close to what was going to happen that, this was all kind of coming to a moment, to a head where we were very, very, very close.
Very, very close. And can you clarify that when we were between two pages and you had said something about, I flipped it the way my printer printed it. Did you say that President Trump was praying or he was in an attitude or prayer? What were you seeing?
Yes, Steve. When I was in that room with him, he was reflecting on everything that had happened, everything that was unfolding. And he was in a posture of prayer early in the morning. He was the only one the house was dark. Like he was up early. He was by himself.
Okay.
And he was just postured in a place of contemplative, sober prayer and reflection. And to me, it felt like he was coming in as low as he could with the Father for what needed to be done.
Wow.
In that position of humility. And so that's what I saw. And I believe that's very, very close in this moment.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's amazing. It's very, very, it's good news, but it's also sobering news. It's joyful news, but it's, sobering, back to sobering, because some event had happened. And event like that where he is that sober and there was a vacuum that needed him to step in. Yeah. It's no small event that happened.
No.
It's something life-changing on the earth, it sounds like. Right?
Yes. Yeah, and I believe that. I know that. I know what's coming, and God's preparing his people to step into that. Not only Trump, he's preparing others to step into these places of vacuum that are going to be left.
Well, and as for Elijah streams, for instance, one of the many ministries that God will be using and is using in this very hour, I have always had a sense that when when it all changed and Trump came back at the timing that God had placed on him, and he was back from that point on, you would need more prophets. You would need prophets more so than ever, because there's a whole paradigm shift in people's minds on the earth, and they would need the voice of prophets to help say, this is what God's saying, do now. This is what God's saying, believe now, expect now. It can't be like us groping in the dark, hoping Trump will show us. We want God to show us.
Yes.
What is our part? And so, and then each person the same. Each person.